Howdy there, Young and Silver Mongoose here, back again for episode 3 of Gaming Favorites. And basically what that is we're going to talk about something that is one of our favorites. It could be a system, a genre, a specific game, and these people don't have to be experts in this. All they have to do is love this subject. And today we're going to be talking about Majora's Mask, which is my favorite game of all time. And we left it out of our Zelda talk, which was episode 2, just to dedicate an entire episode to it. So we have Ryan, ZeldaGameGod, back again. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, everybody.
And we also have Craig from TvandLust.
Hey, folks.
Craig here.
Craig here.
So, Craig, because you weren't with us for the Zelda discussion, could you maybe briefly give us just a little spiel on your history with Zelda?
Sure. I've been playing Zelda since it came out, and I had parents that were pretty good at like blind buying video games. You know what I mean? Sometimes parents, like, you're in GameStop or whatever, and you see parents buying games, and they're buying like Penguin Patrol or whatever for their kids because it's like $3. But yeah. my parents were very good at blind buying games, and we got Zelda. And that was pretty much the first game to just really show me what video games are all about. Because we had Mario and stuff before that, but Zelda really ignited my imagination. That just did so much for me, because so much was left unsaid in the first game. And you were able to visualize it as a player and put the pieces together as a player, and that just did so much for me. And I've been a fan ever since. I would say more recently I've become a bit more of a critical fan, because the more recent games have been a bit have been not up to the usual standards, or at least my standards, I guess. But
no, the three of us here all I believe share similar feelings. ZeldaGameGod, I don't think you've even finished it because of your feelings.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So it's we'll all just say it's not up to our.
It's not even just Skyward Sword. I think I like Skyward Sword. Like in the DS games, I appreciate the different approaches that Nintendo have taken. Like I appreciate the stylus controls. I appreciate the Wii Motion Plus controls. I think those things work for the most part. It's just how they come together. I just don't. I don't really care for. I feel like, for example, in the DS games, I feel like I'm playing like the little game sections on like a diner placemat. Like I don't feel like I'm playing a Zelda game. And Twilight Princess, I think, tried to be too traditional, and then tried to be too big. Like I don't know what went wrong there. I wasn't too into that either.
I really like Twilight Princess, but the DS game, I only played the first one, and I wasn't the hugest fan either. So what is your stance on the series as a whole? Is it maybe one of your top 5 series, or is it way down there? Or
I would say even with the most recent games, it's still my favorite series. Like I have a replica Master Sword and Shield hanging in my hallway, which means not only did I have to purchase those things, I had to ask a woman, "Can I please hang this nerd crap on my wall?"
Yeah,
and
it definitely works in my advantage that my fiance's favorite game is also Majora's Mask.
Oh, nice.
So whenever I was buying the Skull Kid statue, I could basically put it wherever I want. And we also made a replica of the banners held in Clocktown, and we hung that up for a long time. And we had what else? And I also made a Keaton mask back in high school, and we had that on display for a long time as well. So I'm lucky in that respect.
That's very cool.
So that's good to know. I actually didn't know that about how you felt about the Zelda series as a whole. Personally, it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite series. And Ryan, I believe it's your favorite as well.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So, Ryan, why don't you tell us how you got into Majora's Mask specifically? Tell us your history about it.
Well, that's going back a ways, but I do remember Ocarina of Time. Like, I remember seeing the 3D Zelda game. It's like, whoa, this looks really different. And when I heard there was a sequel, like, I just thought, cool, new Zelda game, and that never really happened too often back then, or even now. And I remember it looked a lot like Ocarina of Time, and so it felt really familiar at first. But starting it off, my friend actually my friend, his name was Chris, he always used to help me with those games because I was never really good with video games when I was younger, like not exceptionally good. And so he practically played through the whole thing for me because he just, partly because I'm bad at it and because he was just a game hog. But yeah, so it wasn't actually until I actually beat it myself. That was a few years later, and I don't exactly know when it became my like really big favorite. I guess it wasn't until I became like a really big critic of actually looking critically into video games that I decided that. But I don't know. That's basically just my initial. I didn't really have any initial thoughts on it. Just like it was just another Zelda game, and basically that's just it.
Right, and I'm assuming, Craig, you have a very different story, because what I find interesting about this is that we have three what I would call experienced gamers, but our ages are spanned over 10 years, Craig being the oldest and Ryan being the youngest here, so I expect that there'll be a lot of crossover here, but there'll also be a lot of differences. So could you tell us your history with Majora's Mask specifically?
Sure. This is gonna be really interesting. I don't think I've ever even admitted this on my own podcast, and I don't try to hide it, but it's not something people go around bragging. But during this period, I've always been very creative. Now I have the website and the podcast and everything. But during this period, I had AOL. That was my that was my ISP, as I think it was a lot of other people's. And I ran a Zelda guild. Role playing was kind of big in the AOL chat rooms, and it even had like a little dice command. You do / roll, and you could specify the amount of dice and the sided dice, and that's how you battled. And I ran this guild, and I sent out a newsletter every week talking about people in the guild, the battles they have won or lost, or video game news and things like that. And I remember writing newsletters about like Majora's. I remember like scouring the web for all this information and then putting it in my little newsletter. And I at first was a little turned off. I think back then I was the sort of person that played a lot of like AAA games. I felt like narrative was the most important thing in a video game, which is the complete opposite of how I feel now. And I was like, well, what's this game? Why is it called Zelda Gaiden? This doesn't seem epic. This is not epic enough. This is silly and ridiculous, and it can never match Ocarina of Time. But I still pre-ordered it, of course. I pre-ordered it, and this is way before pre-orders were, like, the big thing that they are now. So, like, the guy even had to, like, they had, like, little slips, and they had to, like, write down the game and everything on the slip, and he wrote down Zelda 2. That kills me still. And I brought it home, and I finished it. I finished it actually much quicker than I finished Ocarina of Time. I think because I was just so wrapped up in it. I not because it was easier or shorter, just because I felt like it was paced better, and I felt like it was just more compelling. And I think, like Ryan, it didn't hit me until much later that this is probably not only my favorite Zelda game, but my favorite game of all time. When I started looking at games critically and thinking like, wow, like all the components are there. I do love this game. This is not second fiddle to Ocarina of Time. This is the game Ocarina of Time wished it could be.
See, and I'm on the complete opposite of the spectrum. Believe it or not, my first Zelda game was Zelda 2, and then I played from that. I went straight to Ocarina of Time, and then it wasn't even until about halfway through Ocarina of Time that I was like, hey, this is kind of like that game I played a while ago, with the towns and the guy with the sword and all that. And I was like, oh yeah, Zelda. And I was so not plugged in to any information. I didn't get Nintendo Power. I didn't read what little was on the internet. I didn't talk to my friends about games or anything. Just my family would, every couple years after a system came out, we'd find a used system, bring it home, and whatever games came with it, that's what we played. I was so not into reading up on things and previewing and salivating over the cassette tapes that Nintendo sent out or anything. So, for me, I was like, Zelda, like Ocarina of Time, was a good game. I really enjoyed it. But I didn't really appreciate it at the time because I didn't really understand how good it was, because I didn't play that many different games. I just played, like I said, you play the 5 or 6 that your parents get you. And then at one point I heard, man, isn't there like another one of those Zelda games out? So this must have been like maybe 2001, 2002 or something. And I was like, maybe I'll just ask for it for Christmas. So I asked for it for Christmas, and I got the expansion pack. And so it was a completely blind buy for me, really, other than the fact that it was Zelda. I knew nothing about it. And at the beginning, I was sort of turned off because I started playing at midnight. What we do in our families, we open up Christmas presents at midnight, and then we play with our presents for like a couple hours and then pass out. So I was trying to save in Majora's Mask, and I couldn't figure out how. And I was reading the manual, and it's like, use the statues, but then if you save, it doesn't really save, so whenever you come back, if you don't resave, then everything's gone, and it's just, I was completely turned off at the beginning. And I actually don't know when I realized it was my favorite game, except for maybe years and years later, looking back. And like you both said, when you started really looking at games and really looking at what you like in games and what you appreciate, and also playing through it multiple times, I found that every time I play Majora's Mask, I find new things, which is something that I can't really say for most other Zelda games, especially the older ones. Once you've beaten it, and you have your guide, you've pretty much experienced it all. But with Majora's Mask, I kept finding more and more things I loved. And then also, when I met my fiancée, and she said it was her favorite game, I started thinking, well, why is this game so great? Why does she love it? And I started looking more into it and really experiencing it and reading up on it. And it was a gradual thing for me. And I guess that's kind of the same for you guys, right?
Yeah.
It was
definitely
more of a gradual love, and not something that just, it's not like Mario 64 where you get it and you're like, wow, this game is amazing. It's something that it's more of a acquired taste, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely takes time to stew.
Mm-hmm. It's in the words of Storm Dane, it's not so much like beer. Instead, it's like athlete's foot. Not quite an acquired taste, but instead, it grows on you.
Yes, I guess you could say that.
I don't know if I'd liken it to an athlete's foot, but okay, that's what you want to go with.
So what is it about Majora's Mask specifically that you love, Craig? What was it that?
Oh boy!
That really made it stand out above, for example, Ocarina of Time, which is one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time. And even back then, a lot of people knew it was amazing. And this game was kind of coming out in the shadow, kind of, how can this really top it? So what is it about it that made it stand out to you? There
is no one thing. It's I think like a lot of games, it's multiple components coming into one. It's this Voltron of video games. And I think one thing about Ocarina of Time that people criticize it for, but it's sort of like a lighthearted criticism, like, oh yeah, no big deal. But it's such an empty world. You have this vast Hyrule Field, and it's fantastic. Like, the first time you hit that, you probably have never played anything like that. You've probably never seen a game where you can look off in the distance and see this expansive field. So it's sort of impressive and thrilling like that. But when it comes to, like, I don't know, the actual gameplay involved, you're like, God, do you actually want to go through this field again? You go to Lake Hylia is the same thing. It's just this vast. It's vast, and there's not a whole lot happening at Lake Hylia. And I like exploration in video games. Like, I don't necessarily value like huge worlds that's exhausting, but I like well-designed, well-made worlds that give me enough nooks and crannies to explore. And I think Termina completely trumps Hyrule in that regard. Hyrule Field is smaller. I mean, Termina Field is smaller than Hyrule Field, but it's more densely packed. Like, there's actually more things to see in Termina Field, and you have all these different areas branching off of it, but they sort of branch off in a very almost organic kind of way. I mean, not quite. It's still a hub with branches off of it, but it feels more organic, more natural than Hyrule felt. and there's more diversity, and it's they're just more fun to explore. Like you have is it Snowhead or Snow Peak? I forget the name of the mountain. But that's way more interesting to climb than Death Mountain. Death Mountain's just a trail. It's like a beginner's hiking trail going up Death Mountain. Whereas Snowhead is there's actual like ledges to climb on, and there are things to navigate, and it's just far more compelling world to explore. That was a big thing for me.
I'm going to have to disagree though about Hyrule Field. I know you really don't share the sentiment, but for me, maybe it's just because they were limited and they were just trying to be impressive or whatever. But to me, the fact that there's not much to do in Hyrule Field is kind of, it's more real. I mean, if you go into a huge field, I don't know if you've ever been in any huge fields, there's nothing to do there.
There's also no pea-hats in huge fields, dude. there are no pea-hats. So any field I go into doesn't have that. So I'm not looking for realism, I have to be honest.
Wait, you've never seen a pea-hat in real life?
No. Maybe I'm just limited in my experiences, but I've never seen a pea-hat.
But even just something like the spaces in Wind Waker, or the emptiness, the quote-unquote emptiness in something like Shadow of the Colossus or whatever, or the emptiness in Hyrule Field, for me, it still serves a purpose.
I see.
And I can totally understand what you're saying, but for me, it's. Did you feel that it was empty in Wind Waker, or did you feel it was empty in Shadow of the Colossus? I know you're not a fan of Colossus.
No, but I think thematically those negative spaces were used more appropriately in those two games, whereas with Ocarina of Time, it wasn't used mechanically or thematically to any real end. It was just like, look how big this is! Whereas in Shadow of the Colossus and Wind Waker, those were components of how the game was structured. I don't feel that was the case in Ocarina.
Right. So part of it is that there is just more in less.
I think so. Yep.
Right.
Wait. So if I could just ask a quick question here, like, what did you think of Twilight Princess's field then?
I had mixed feelings on that, because that one, that's holy crap, because that's huge. There's nothing. And when did Hyrule like suddenly move to like a gorge? Like every area was like sectioned off by canyons.
Yeah.
I do think there were a few more interesting places to explore in there. Like, there were more caves and stuff, I think. Or maybe there were. Maybe I'm just making that up. But
No, there are definitely more caves, and there was stuff to find, like the insects, right?
Yes.
And I don't know.
But it was still a lot of empty space, still a lot of wasted space in Twilight.
Again, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the empty space.
Fair enough.
Personally.
Fair enough.
What about you, Ryan? I know we talked about this before, but I forget.
About the empty space?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, I'm one of those people who actually really liked the sailing in Wind Waker, but I'm also one of those people who thought that Hyrule Field in Twilight Princess was too big. I didn't get that in Ocarina of Time. I thought Ocarina of Time was well balanced. Twilight Princess, I was just like, whoa. It's cool. I'm gonna be honest with you. I love how big it is. I love the feel. Just felt it could have used a little bit more to look for.
Yeah, like maybe if it had a couple more collectibles like the bugs, then you would have had more of a purpose to search, you mean? Like, I don't need a building or like 3 or 4 buildings in every field, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Maybe something else to actually look for. Maybe a couple more, I don't know, a couple more items that are only collectibles. I don't know.
Yeah,
but anyway,
I don't know.
Majora's Mask. So do you so you don't really share the sentiment? Was that really something that attracted you, Ryan, to Majora's Mask?
Well, nothing really attracted me to it, but like, as far as what makes it my favorite, like, what makes it my favorite overall, definitely just like atmosphere. All atmosphere, because when you look at it from a technical standpoint, as an actual, like, as just a Zelda game, without all the atmosphere, it's just like, the dungeons, I think, are lackluster. The items are repetitive, although the masks are the exception, though, but that's a whole different. I think the dungeons are kind of repetitive. The games are not repetitive, but just like not as good as any other game in the series, in my opinion. And I just think, as a game, it's just an average Zelda game, maybe a little bit below average in gameplay, but with the story and the atmosphere and all that put together, it really just sucks me in. Like, all the characters and just the whole dark, somber tone of the game. That's what gets me on it.
I'm gonna have to agree with you about the dungeons. The last 2 dungeons, which I believe is the Snow Peak one with the Goron and the...
That's the first 2. That's one of the first 2.
Yeah, it's...
The last 2 were Stone Tower Temple and Great Bay.
Yeah.
Right, so the Great Bay and the Goron one, I hated those dungeons. They were not fun. And trying to find the Great Fairy, all the little fairies in there, that was terrible. That was not enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely.
And the music in the Great Bay Temple is so terrible. I hate that music. It's my least favorite Zelda song. I don't know if you guys remember it, but it's not enjoyable. For me, it wasn't. Majora's Mask wasn't about, like you said, more traditional Zelda things, because they don't even give them any more unique items. There's like the powder keg, and there's maybe a couple other things other than the masks, and the gameplay was kind of like the dungeons were kind of so-so. I really liked the Forest Temple, and I really liked the stone, whatever it was called, Stonehead or the Canyon
Tower Temple.
Yeah, Stone Tower Temple.
That temple was actually pretty beautiful. I loved it.
But the other 2, which is half of them, I just didn't really do it for me. I kind of see it as a chore to advance.
Yeah, definitely. The whole, actually, honestly, for personally me, the Goron, the whole section with the snow, I think it's just a video game thing in general. I hate snow areas in video games, and
I love snow areas. They're my favorite.
But I mean, like, I did not like. I hated finding the stupid elder. I hated getting the stupid song. The Zora parts, I actually didn't mind. I didn't even mind the dungeon. I thought the dungeon was pretty cool because I love Zora Link and I love playing as Zora Link. But it's funny. I actually, back to the fairies. I usually get all the fairies when I'm going through because I love getting the power ups. Last time when me and my friend live streamed the game, we went through the entire game in one stream, and I didn't get the fairies just out of, I guess, laziness you could call it. It literally cut the dungeon time by my dungeon time by 75%.
It takes a lot of time to find those.
Yeah, it takes time to find those.
Even I found them, I didn't try to find them without the guide, and even with the guide, it still took a lot of time because you have to jump off a ledge and go on this other ledge, and then, what do you know, there's no way to get back up except to start over the dungeon, and it's just...
Yeah, it's...
Hey, Craig, how did you feel about the 4 dungeons?
I actually completely disagree. I really like the 4 dungeons. I think that they were structured very differently from most Zelda dungeons. With Snow Peak or Snowhead, that was really interesting in the way you traverse a dungeon using the Goron roll. That's not really something that's really been replicated in any other Zelda dungeon. I thought that was really interesting. And when it comes to the Great Bay Temple, that was a lot of fun because there's a good chance you're going to get lost in that temple because of all the interconnecting tubes. That's kind of a... That can be a pain, and it can still be a pain in the way it's implemented, but I find with the fact that you basically go at Mach speed with Zora Link, I think cuts down on a lot of the frustration, so it becomes like this weird, zany tube, just, I don't know, like one of those old TV shows where people are running indoors and coming out others, and I can understand why people wouldn't like that, but I think there was a sort of structured chaos to that I kind of like if you really want to navigate, I think it was by color, if I'm not mistaken. If you really wanted to navigate those tubes appropriately, you could, but or you could just zoom through them and hope you come out where you want to be. And I think that was kind of fun, actually. But I do also like the what was the first temple? Was it some swamp or Deku Palace Temple or something like that?
Yeah.
And then Stone Tower. I do agree those were also quite good. But one of the interesting side effects of completing these at least the first 2 temples was that they changed the landscape. They actually altered aspects of the game by doing that, and I thought that was kind of cool.
I actually forgot about that.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of neat. Obviously, it's not permanent because of the time travel mechanic. But we just lost Ryan.
Well, just keep going.
Okay. But it's not permanent because of the time travel mechanic, but there's actually a more than just, hey, I got the doodad, let's move on. There's more to it than that, and I kind of like that as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a bit of that in previous games, like Ocarina of Time. You unfreeze the Zoras and you make the Death Mountain less deadly, I guess. But no, I get what you mean. And even though it's not permanent, you can warp straight to the boss, can't you? And just kill them and then...
In Majora's Mask?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you can. So that even when you reset the timeline, you can just go back and pretty much just do the boss.
Yeah.
And I mean, Got was an awesome boss.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun. Actually, all the bosses were. I think yes, really enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Okay, Ryan, why aren't you back yet?
I'm because I have to call him, and I'm gonna do that right now.
Oh, okay.
But for me though, I think I sort of understand the sentiment that the dungeons. I disagree that they were like lackluster. I actually really enjoyed them, but I think they perhaps were not the focus of the game. And no. I think that was really hard for a lot of people to accept. Like 4 dungeons, and yet the game is just as long, if not longer, than Ocarina of Time.
I mean, maybe until Wind Waker came out, it was probably the Zelda that had the most amount of side quests and most amount of quote-unquote non-essential material.
Right.
Right? And I guess people who weren't really into that didn't get it. And the 3-day time constraint, again, quote-unquote constraint, people were really turned off. I was speaking to somebody who Majora's Mask is their least favorite game, and they said that they spent all this time trying to find all the Bomber kids, like the first time they played, and then they couldn't find them all in time, and then the 3 days reset, and then they felt, well, now I have to start that all over, and there's no guarantee that I'm gonna find them all next time, and they just put down the game, and they said, I don't want to do this. They felt constrained by the 3-day cycle.
I've never known that to happen to anyone.
They took 3 days to find the Bomber Gang.
Well, maybe they started on the 3rd day, but they started early on in the game where you can't speed time, you can't slow it down, and I guess they just saw it as this constraint, and they thought in their mind, I'm going to have to do this the entire game. And I understand why that would turn people off, but that's the most extreme case that I've heard of. And did either of you two feel... how did you feel about the time mechanic?
Well, I don't understand how people think the 3-day time limit is so constricting. I mean, honestly, it's really not that hard. I mean, I'm not just saying that because I've played it like a billion times, but like you can slow it down and you have a lot of time.
I think even if you don't slow it down, it's up to an hour and a half even, isn't it?
Yeah, somewhere around there. I mean, like 72 minutes, so...
Yeah.
I mean, it's like...
It's a lot of time.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of time. I mean, the only time I find myself running out of time is when I overestimate my ability to complete certain tasks, and then I'll, like, try to do 2 dungeons in the 3-day span, or maybe, like, 3 dungeons in the 3-day span, and I'll just, like, run out of time then. But other than that, I really don't see any, like, restraint to it. Any big restraint.
I don't
never
either.
did as well.
Yeah.
And you didn't feel as well, Craig?
No, especially with the inverted Song of Time. Is the inverted Song of Time? I don't remember. Is that actually alluded to in the game itself at all, or is that just something like?
Yes, it is.
It is, okay. Then I see no excuse to really be concerned with it. I mean, if it's one of those things that like that you can never know about unless you're like plugged into the internet or like a friend told you, then I guess I can sort of understand some consternation. But if the game tells you like, hey, if you do this, it's not that big of a problem. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that really shouldn't be too much of a concern.
No, and a lot of people even they found it kind of the opposite, that it was too much time, because I know the Japanese version didn't have the owl statues. They added that for the North American version.
That must suck.
Because I guess they, you get halfway through a temple or something and you can't save, so you couldn't just turn it off. You'd have to actually complete the temple or like restart your 3-day cycle to save. So I don't know. I I find it really interesting that a lot of people seem to have the opposite problem, or at least maybe the Japanese market had the opposite problem. I don't know. I personally never used the owl statues, though. I found something really interesting when I was looking up stuff from Majora's Mask. They were talking about, it was an interview with Miyamoto, who said that, well, it's probably best if I just read the quote. And they're talking about the 3-day constraint, and he said, as a matter of fact, we intentionally made it so people would have to repeat the same set of events during the 3 days. You may recall that Zelda series before this had the same kind of repetition, but not within a time frame, but within the terrain, the game's map. By exploring the same sections of terrain again and again, game players are meant to become masters of the landscape. With Majora's Mask, we've simply added another landscape called time. And we want the game players to become fully familiar with the events and the happenings during that 3 days of the game, along with the kind of changes that can be made to the world that's being explored. Thus, the primary role the time element plays. And to me, whenever I read that, it made a lot of sense. And it's basically just saying that, and it kind of explained to me also why I love Majora's Mask, because to me it was in finding the different events. I mean, as soon as you start the game, in Clocktown, you know that there are events. You see Kafei run out right from the side, or Kafei, or I don't know how to actually pronounce that name. You probably know, Craig.
Yeah, more like Kafei.
Kafei. So you see Kafei run down, check the mailbox, and then run away. And that's something that he only does then, and you just... For me, I wanted to know where all the characters were at all times. I wanted to know, what they were doing over this cycle. To me, they weren't just static. They weren't just, in all previous games, but to bring it to a Zelda example, just in Ocarina of Time, whenever you're in the Hyrule Market, there's, that one guy that stands over there, this is 2 things, and there's that other girl that stands over there and says 2 things, and they just stand there all day, and then at night they're gone. In Majora's Mask, you have the character that walks around, he goes to the milk bar, and then he leaves, and he goes and talks to other people, and he walks around town, and, I mean, it seems really primitive now, but to me, that was, this is a living, breathing town.
I actually don't think it's primitive even now. I think the cycle is necessary in to establish these routines. These routines have to be scripted in order to be meaningful and have consequence, because they are meaningful and they do have consequence. If you contrast this with, say, games that do this now, that try to emulate things like this now without that cycle, something like Skyrim, the behaviors have no meaning or no consequence. Bethesda has this, what they call radiant AI, where characters are supposed to interact and do things based on a complex AI system, but all they end up doing is really just sort of standing around and sweeping their porches. It's not very complex, and there's no meaning to it. There's no point. It's sort of like a puppet show. Whereas in Majora's Mask, where people are and what they're doing has great effect on your quest, because a primary component of the quest is interacting with these people and becoming attached to them in their world.
Right, and I totally agree, because that honestly was the example I was thinking of. I was thinking of Morrowind, where the characters are doing things, but I mean, they walk to the bar, and they stand around there, and then they walk back to their house. And like you said, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, you can kind of imagine, okay, they're there to the bar to drink, but I don't think that a normal person, all they would do in their life is walk home, walk to the bar. I mean, there probably are people who do.
Right, exactly.
But you get what I'm saying, right? Whereas, Kafei, he actually has, he's hiding in his little area, he runs out to check the box, and then he, you can affect that turn of events. And I don't know about you, but as soon as I started the game, I was very interested in this character. And why is he checking the mailbox? Why is he wearing a mask? And why is he running and hiding in the bath area? And I just waited there. And I tried to figure out, how can I talk to this character? How can I interact with him? How can I figure out him or her, because he didn't even know that. How do you figure out their story? And then I eventually found myself wanting to do this with everybody. And they try to encourage this by giving you the Bomber's Notebook and saying, hey, look at all these people. These people are really depressed. You got to fix that.
Yeah.
And they try to do that in other games as well, but it feels so I don't know how to say it. It just feels so fake.
It does, and I don't want to criticize other games because I play other games and I enjoy them. So my goal is not necessarily to criticize them, but again, I think the closest analog we might have are Western RPGs where you have all these side quests, and the side quests are like, oh dear me, I dropped some stupid random bauble over here. Can you go over there and get it for me? Or oh my, there's a bunch of bad guys you need to kill. Can you do that, please? And that's fine and all because finding things and killing things are your primary gameplay mechanics in games like that. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just giving you context, but it doesn't do anything to draw you into that world or draw you into those characters. They're just quest dispensers. They're not people. Mm-hmm. And in Majora's Mask, you do have a handful of Bomber's Notebook quests that are, you know, centered on killing things or finding things, but even then, they're sort of meaningful, I think. And you have smaller ones. You have one where the whole point is just to dance with the Rosa sisters, and it's not hard to do. I mean, you have to have the mask to do that. There's a prerequisite, but it's really simple to do. You pretty much just press one button, but if you've been paying attention to the game up to that point, you've seen the Rosa sisters, and you've maybe even seen them practicing. And that sort of draws you into their story by doing that one simple thing. What else do you march with chickens to help them grow up. You get the Bremen mask, and you just sort of march around with them, and it's really sort of endearing. You have bigger quests.
Yeah, but even with the dancing mask, like, whenever you're doing that, you are fulfilling a role. You are filling the place of a master teaching his students, because I can't remember why, but for some reason he can't do that at the time, and he's trusting you with this role, and you're helping him, you're easing him of that burden.
Yeah, you had to play the Song of Healing for him, I think.
Yeah, so, like, to me, that it feels a bit more of a purpose.
Right.
Than just, go catch my 10 cuckoos, and I'll give you a bottle. Like, that doesn't really affect her life much.
Right.
I mean, it means she doesn't have to plant them herself.
It's a fine gameplay trope, but it does nothing to draw you into the world.
Exactly.
Well, Majora's Mask is also one of the... I think Twilight Princess did this as well, but, like, Twilight Princess did do this, but Majora's Mask deals a lot with death and the theme of death in the game.
But it also deals with healing.
Yeah.
And with easing burdens, and part of that is death. I mean, whenever, for example, you get you get your Goron mask or your Zora mask, you're fulfilling their last wishes.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say, like, it doesn't do it. I'm just saying, like, I like how Majora's Mask goes in depth on, like, the spiritual aspect of the masks and, like, what the masks contain. Like, the Deku
mask
is the only one that isn't really explained. Well, I mean, it comes off you.
Yeah. But again, like, I just discovered actually where that came from, like, last year or something. Going back to where I'd find things new about Majora's Mask all the time. You find out it's from the butler's son who just happened to be in the woods, and the Skull Kid was, well, I'm going to rip your soul out and leave you here as a tree.
Yeah.
And I'm going to shove your soul onto this other kid, because it'll be funny. And it's all these little things, like, it's much more...
Intertwined?
Yeah, it's intertwined, and it's a lot of the things that people say in the game. If you like just read like a list of quotes, a lot of the quotes are fantastic. They all, they're really. It feels different to me. For example, there's at one point you can, if you talk to Romania, I think her name is. She says, my sister, Premia, there's someone in town that she likes, but the person is supposed to get married at the day of the carnival. It's hard for my sister going into town. And if that was in any other game, I would just say, stupid little girls in love, so what, I don't care. But for some reason in this game, it just means more to me. And whenever you're speaking to characters like the Happy Mask Salesman or the Kids on the Moon, the things that they're saying, it just... Maybe because I feel like it's more real, more related to, pain and suffering, and something that's more real than just... I don't know, it's really hard to explain. It is. You both get it.
Yeah, it's... So you say real, and I think there's a sort of grounding to it, but I think it feels sort of... I think it feels more surreal. I feel that it's poetic, where it's expressing something, but it's not using like concrete things like prose might. So I feel that there's a sort of loose interpretations of what is being said for each individual player, or even what is happening, like poetry can do. Whereas, other games might be more like prose, where it's very like, here is what is going on, here's this, here's that. And I think there might be a little less impact in that, a little less emotion in that. I feel like Majora's Mask's surrealness helps conjure up those emotions in people.
Mm-hmm.
Or it doesn't explicitly say, yes, it doesn't explicitly state very much. You have to piece it together and sort of apply your own thoughts and feelings to what is going on.
Right. Like for example, the example I gave with the butler's son.
Absolutely.
If you don't read into that, which I didn't the first time I played, where he tells you, "Oh, you look like my son. You remind me of racing with my son through the woods," and of course I took that as, well, I'm a Deku, of course, like, it makes perfect sense. But then if you think back to the few hours before where you were in the woods and Tattle tells you this twisted figure looks sad, and then you learn the concepts of how the mask works and how you're taking on the soul or the persona of a specific person, then you figure it out. There's that aha moment, like, oh, this makes sense. Oh, that's what they were trying to say. That's what this means. And you don't get that in a lot of games because they just explain stuff to you.
Yep.
In another game, if it were another game, the butler would simply say, "Oh, my son, he got transformed by the Skull Kid. I'm really upset about that. You should go defeat him." Like, I can honestly see that happening in other games. Yeah. Somebody just saying something so simple.
They treat you like you're stupid sometimes.
Yeah, and in Majora's Mask, they just treat you like you said. Everything is so surreal and so poetic that a lot of the writing it comes off as poetry in a way, and the entire game is so surreal. And I don't know. I just feel like the characters, for me, the characters in this game are some of the first characters I ever actually cared about. Whenever, I don't know if you two experience this, but whenever you played Ocarina of Time and you wake up from your 8-year sleep and you go into Hyrule Castletown and it's destroyed, there's burning buildings and smoke, and understandably, or it's not told to you directly, but a lot of the people in that town died and they've turned into re-deads, and I didn't care.
And
did either of you care?
I cared in a very loose sense, in a way that, like, oh, this sucks, but not in like I have to go kill Ganon now, but not in the way that Majora's Mask does. Not even close.
No, actually, but no. Go ahead, Brian. Go ahead.
He's probably talking right now.
Wasn't there a little...
Sorry, okay. You cut out. Go ahead.
Sorry. Maybe I'm just pulling this out from nowhere, but I'm pretty sure in the game, I don't exactly remember where, but I'm pretty sure in the game, somebody tells you that the Red-Deads aren't the townspeople, they're just created by Ganon's magic, and the townspeople are safe.
That might have happened.
When you first wake up, you don't know that, right?
Yeah,
I thought that they were the townspeople that were, they're zombies or whatever. I was like, I don't know, I was like 15 or something. Just, zombies there. So, but if, like, whenever the moon is coming to crash down on Clocktown, I actually cared, and I was like, I don't want Clocktown to be destroyed. And even whenever I would go back in time, I would kind of wonder, am I just really... I mean, it's getting kind of philosophical here, but I kind of had the idea, is Link just leaving this one timeline and the town is still being destroyed? And I kind of felt guilty every time that I wasn't saving Clocktown. And I felt, I actually felt bad a little bit, which, maybe that's a bit more than what you guys were feeling for it. And I totally understand. I have extremely strong feelings for this game, but the point I'm trying to make is I actually cared about... what happened there, and I actually wanted to save them, whereas in most other games, I just wanted to save so I can win, so I can beat the game, right? Whereas here it was, I actually, I've learned the lives of these characters, I've learned their problems, I know that some of them are, they're in love, and there's families, and It just came off a lot stronger to me, and I wanted to save them. I don't know if you guys experienced that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, absolutely. The game even goes so far as to help you sympathize with the villain, because, I mean, the villain really isn't Skull Kid.
No.
And you sort of think it is, because you don't really understand that Majora's Mask is an entity unto itself. I think the Happy Mask Salesman either says it or alludes to it, but you don't really see Majora himself. You see the Skull Kid. That is the representation of your villain. And my understanding is that it's been a while since I last played it, but the Skull Kid just was... I mean, he's a selfish little brat, but he just wanted friends. He wanted to be liked and to have friends. And so he was so miserable that sort of, in combination with Majora, he, almost destroyed Termina because he was so miserable. Like, he's still a terrible, terrible little Skull Kid, but like, you can sort of sympathize with the fact that he is so lonely and so miserable that he's just going to wipe everything out. Like, that's kind of strong. That's very different than the typical villain who wants power or, I don't know, money or some object or something. He is just scared and miserable.
And it's really difficult to make a villain to sympathize with, because I think he's probably one of the only ones, because usually whenever you're they try to make you sympathize with a villain. They give you some lame backstory with, his father never hugged him enough, and now he's lashing out, or his wife was killed and he's really upset, so he turned evil, and it's just... I don't really sympathize with that, but with Skull Kid, maybe it's because he is a kid, and he just wants, he just wants friends, and he's more of being used as a puppet, which, comes off very plainly near the end.
Right.
You sympathize with pretty much everyone in the game, really. Whether they're jerks or not, even the carpenter, the main carpenter, he's not a nice guy. So he's yelling at people. He's, my son's lazy and all this, and I hate you guys, and you guys are just a bunch of babies. The moon's not coming down, whatever. But then I just imagine him as this old-fashioned father figure who just doesn't want to give in, and he's just so stubborn. But deep down, he's probably afraid.
Yeah.
Like whenever. Keep going.
Sorry. I just love on the final day. The atmosphere then is really nice. Like like you said, the carpenter. I believe he's the only one who actually stays for the carnival, and he's like, it's really interesting to see these characters, like how they line up their own priorities, and you just see the soldiers like. Sorry, what?
I was just saying he's totally in denial. Like, you can feel that coming off of him.
And then like the soldiers, like they have to be there, like it's their duty, and you just see them like with their hands on their chest, looking up at the moon, and it's like that's when that really hits you.
Mm-hmm. And you look at the bomber kids, and the bomber kids are like, "Oh, my mommy says everything's going to be okay," and they're just walking around playing, and you just sympathize with everybody. And I don't know if you two have discovered this. You probably have, but if you go into the swordsman's his shop, and you go into the back of the shop, you can slice open the wall, and the swordsman is there, and he's cowering in the corner, and he's shaking about how he's afraid, and you see this character who has tried to be so brave, and previously he tells you, whatever the moon, I'm not afraid, I'm a brave swordsman, I don't have to deal with this. But then it gets to the point where he just breaks down, and he realizes, well, I was just trying to put up face, put on a mask, if you will, and they just seem so real. Because I can sympathize with all those characters, because I've met people like that in my life who if in a situation like this would probably just be so stubborn and would stay home. And then there's some that give up, and they say, well, what's the point of running? It's the moon. It's going to kill us all. And then you have some people like Anju who just decides, I'm going to stay here and wait for my husband. Like, we're supposed to get married, and I love him so much, and he's going to show up. I know it. And if you don't do anything about it, you prove her wrong, and she waits there and dies.
Yeah.
As the moon crushes her. Right?
That whole last day is super tense and uncomfortable. Like, if you actually take the time to experience it, like, that whole discomfort totally permeates that entire day.
Yeah. And it really starts whenever the ground is shaking and the the music starts. I don't know what that song is actually called. Probably Last Day or something. But the song that only plays for about 5 minutes, the last 5 minutes or something, that song, for me, was so powerful that anytime I'm listening to the soundtrack, which my fiancé and I have and we do listen to, I skip that song every time. And not because I don't want to feel uncomfortable, but because I want to. I want to feel uncomfortable in the game when that happens, because it's such a powerful and real feeling, and I don't want to lessen the effect, right? I don't want to lessen how that'll make me feel, the impact. So I actually skip that song every time, because that song is so powerful. You hear the crashing and the bells, and then it gets so weird that the fireworks are going off, and people are, presumably some people are celebrating, and maybe the carpenter's just setting off the fireworks, and there's just it's so tense and it's so surreal. And on that note, I find it so weird that nobody comments on how the moon has a crazy face. I always found that weird, and I'm wondering, I would love to ask one of the creators why they actually did that. Because maybe to make it more threatening, because honestly, if I think about it, if the moon was just coming down, getting slightly bigger, it wouldn't be that threatening, I guess.
Probably not.
No, and maybe that's why. I guess we just kind of answered it, but I'd still like to hear one of the creators say it in their cryptic Japanese way.
On the subject of the last day and sympathetic characters, is anyone else really sympathetic towards the Giants? Because I always have been, and I think the song you play, some of them is called Oath to Order. Their entire purpose is to hold this moon back. You are calling them under a certain sense of duty. Everyone else can flee or do whatever they want, but they have to come to hold this moon up so that no one dies.
Yeah.
I've never thought of that.
It's super somber. Even the song Oath to Order, when you play, is a very somber song, and the Giants look and sound sad. And I've always pitied the Giants. I've always thought they were some of the most pitiable characters in the game.
I assumed that they were sad because they know that this is partially their fault. I don't know how much of this is from the game and how much of it's from the manga, because I get them mixed up all the time, and I don't know how much of the manga is actually canon. But they explain how they the Skull Kid was kind of their friend, and how they walk away, probably to fulfill their duty somewhere else, maybe, or something like that. But they don't want to, but they do, and then the Skull Kid gets sad, and then he goes in the woods and steals a mask, and they kind of cause all this.
I think that is partially alluded to in the game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, near the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why if I pitied them at all, it was because of that. But I never thought of it as I guess a sense of duty that they have to do it. But that's interesting. Did you felt that way, Ryan?
I never really thought so much about the Giants. Now that you guys mention it, it is actually kind of interesting to ponder, the Giants' purpose. What I always wondered, as far as them and the Skull Kid being friends, I always wondered how that relationship actually played out.
Yeah.
I don't know, if he meant friends, spiritually, or, if he meant friends, let's play tag, but I don't know how, they even crossed paths. That always just kind of confused me, so I guess that kind of always got in the way of me pondering the Giants' greater purpose, but I was just always wondering about that.
I think that's one of those poetic things where, if it's explained in prose and they're playing tag and kickball, it's going to sound really stupid, but it's just one of those poetic things that allows you to interpret it as you will. But the Giants are just very different from every other Zelda game. You are collecting some sort of trinket or doodad or whatever. In this one, you are summoning. You are going to find people to summon. I guess that's sort of similar to Ocarina of Time, but they're giving you medallions. They're adding their power to yours. It's not quite the same thing. But in this one, you are physically going to get a being to help you. You are not necessarily getting a thing.
Are you freeing them, or are you just talking to them? I can't remember now.
They might. I don't know, because maybe they're held back by that particular boss, because you kill the boss and then you do get a thing. You do get the mask of the boss. It doesn't do anything, I don't think. I don't think you can wear their masks.
No.
I think that's just a signifier on the item screen to show that you did defeat them.
I know they have some sort of power. I can't exactly remember what it is, but I'm pretty sure the giants are being held back in some way, shape, or form by the power of the bosses. Like, and you take the power in their masks or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I can't quite remember what exactly happens at this moment.
More of just opening the door, I guess, and you're like, all right, you're free to go. When I play this song, you better show up.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you're going to go to the giant's house or, like, laying on their couch.
You need to go to work. Oh, God. After Mori.
That's really interesting. I never thought about the giants, actually. To me, they were just
MacGuffins.
there's those guys with the big noses that are going to come and help you out.
Majora's Mask in and of itself, it's really interesting because it does not use Ganondorf at all. I mean, I don't think it's the first or the only Zelda game to do that, but it's the only Zelda game to really go in depth on the idea of Majora, and I don't know if Fierce Deity is whatever this actual name is or whatever, but the Fierce Deity, like, it's weird. They're not like these, I mean, like, Zelda's universe has always had, like, gods and goddesses and stuff, but these are different. They're more like, they're really powerful entities. Kind of
that
almost
actually
like,
do stuff, unlike the gods.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
Up there.
But I mean, you also had that in Link's Awakening. That was also, like, you also have, like, the Windfish and the Nightmares in Link's Awakening, so
that's true.
It's not entirely new.
But did Link's Awakening really happen?
Right. But I mean, I understand your point. I think it's definitely interesting that within one game, whether it's Majora's Mask or Link's Awakening, there's like this self-contained mythos. Whereas you have the larger Zelda game and it has its own mythos, but then it just completely makes crap up and changes everything. Like there's
well that too, because Termina like is apparently like some quote unquote parallel world or something, which kind of like makes you wonder like. Are these like parallels to the other people? Are they, possibly how they could have lived their lives? Or are they not related at all? Is this even, like, again, the question comes up, is it even real?
Or like, Nintendo does not want to make new models.
Yeah, or that.
That might have been a big part of it.
that very could have.
Well, because
Majora's Mask came out, like, what, a year?
Yeah, they spent about a year working on it. And apparently it had a smaller team as well. And I don't even think Miyamoto did that much. He was very hands-off. I think this was the first project that the other guy, I don't remember his name, starts with an A.
Yeah, Aonuma.
Yeah, that he was really given more of a full reign. They went up, Miyamoto's like, do this. And he's like, okay. And then he did it. I think Miyamoto said something about, like, I asked them to build the table, and I don't care what's on the table when it's done. So long as the table's there, I'm happy.
Yeah.
So he really didn't have that much, much of a hand in it.
I think their philosophies, I think Anuma's and Miyamoto's philosophies tend to conflict. I think that's why I'm not super into, like, later... I mean, I loved Wind Waker, but I mean, like, Twilight Princess or, like, Skyward Sword, because I think Miyamoto had more of a hand in those games than he did Majora's Mask, if I'm not mistaken. And I think they sort of butt heads, because I don't think Aonuma likes... I don't think he even likes 2D Zelda games. I don't think he's into those. Like, I think he has a completely different attitude, and which is why we got something like Majora's Mask from him, and, like, later Zelda games, they almost seem like... I think Skyward Sword in particular, they don't really have, like, a strong message. It's just a bunch of stuff that people threw in and really didn't make completely meaningful.
Right. It seems like it was kind of like this perfect storm of, all right, this is kind of your first big project. The game is pretty much, like, the bones are there. You just kind of have to fill it with stuff. So you can kind of do what you want. I don't really care. And, oh yeah, you have 1 year to do it. And let's go. And they took on, I think they said they took on, and they made a big point of this, like 5 new staff members that were straight out of college. So I guess 5 was a big number back then. So I'm sure they had a lot of influence on it as well, because there was programming to do, but the bare bones was there, and it was really just let's spend time making this interesting, and we're going to add this really weird time mechanic, and it's just
What's really cool is that even the character models they reused they had a higher poly count, and they added things like Anju is the Kuko lady, and the Kuko lady didn't move; she just kind of pivoted around on a pole, I guess. Whereas Anju like actually has animation cycles, so like even though they reused character models, they gave new life to them.
Yeah, and a lot of them aren't dressed, really the same. Like the bartender isn't really the same as the guy who ran the ranch. And then they do even weird things like having young Milan and old Milan as two separate characters, as sisters. And I don't know, it also adds to the surreal feel.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I know these people, but I don't know these people.
Yeah, they don't know me, and I kind of know them, and I just love how it's so detached from other games. Like, Zelda is there for, like, one scene, and she's like, hey, remember this song I told you? Well, remember that, because it's important. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
And then it pretty much has nothing to do with other Zelda games at all, other than the Happy Mask Man, who himself is very weird, because he clearly has some sort of power and some sort of hand in what you're doing. Because whenever you die, the world is destroyed, and you show up, he's like, it's like messed up again, eh? Like he knows what's going on. But it seems like yeah, and he's magically summons a gigantic organ, and he just has like weird missing animation and freaks out at you, and he seems to have like immense power in some ways, but for some reason, because he even says like, I had to go through great lengths to get the mask, and he's trusting you. He's like, I want you to go get this. It almost seems like he has all this power, but for some reason he's restrained. He has to stay in the clock tower and stay safe and trust you to go do this. And there's so many weird characters like that in this game. Like, does he know what's going on? I think he does, but why isn't he doing more if he's so powerful? And
he also says he had to leave in 3 days, and like it makes me wonder, like if he actually knew what was going to happen, or if he didn't, like what did he have to, like what does he even do that makes him so busy?
He's got to steal more masks. He's got to go steal some more masks from people.
I wonder how he even got Majora's Mask in the first place. I mean, like, I wonder where Majora's Mask ended up before he got hold of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's a story behind it at all, really. I mean, unless you take
probably not.
Unless you take the manga as canon,
which
I really don't think it is. And even then, that was like the beginning of time that the mask was made. Presumably some stuff happened between the beginning of time and Majora's Mask. So, it's really weird. And I on one hand, I'm thinking there isn't a story. There isn't, all this stuff. Like, they're just making a game. They don't see it as like this mythos. But then, like, Hyrule Historia came out, and they started coming out with things like, oh, Kapora Gabora was actually just one of the sages, just spying on you. And, like, the hero Shade in Twilight Princess is actually Ocarina of Time Link. And you start, like, thinking, like, maybe there is more to these than just simple Nintendo games. Like, maybe there is a mythos, and it makes me wonder about, like, the origins of the mask and if there actually is one. And the people's place. Like, is the Happy Mask Salesman the same one as in the other game? And it just brings up the whole alternate timelines and everything, and I don't know. I
hate Hyrule Historia, man. Like, who came up with this? Oh, man. I guess just on a tangent of, like, the Zelda timeline or story, like, I used to want to believe that there was a timeline. Like, because, like I said, when I was younger, like, narrative and things like that were very important to me in video games, and they're really not now. But I really wanted to believe there was a timeline and that there was a connection, and there was, because they do connect things. There are these loose connections and things, but now I don't care. Now I'm sort of content to think that they're, generally speaking, these standalone things that might reference other games, or might even, I mean, there are a couple that are definitely direct sequels. I mean, A Link to the Past, like, Link's Awakening was supposed to be a direct sequel to A Link to the Past. Like, that was pretty much a given in the manual. When you're reading the manual, it's like, oh, Link defeated Ganon, but the townspeople were worried. What will come of his ashes? Like it was really supposed to be a continuation of A Link to the Past, and I think Hyrule Historia dashed that to hell.
Like they just made the game, and then they're like, okay, it's connected because of this. Because even like I remember reading early stuff on Wind Waker. They're like, yeah, Wind Waker is going to be first in the series. I'm like, that's what you said about Ocarina of Time. And now that's what you're saying about Skyward Sword. Like, where does it start?
And I thought Minish Cap was... I mean, Minish Cap might as well be called The Legend of Zelda, How Link Got His Big Green Floppy Hat. And...
I haven't played it, so I don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of like the whole moral to that to that game. And I don't know why that doesn't really fit.
Skyward Sword came before it, and he had the hat in there.
Right, exactly. I kind of wish they explored that a little bit more.
In the last video?
Yes, you did. But at the time, I didn't know that Skyward Sword was first. Now I do.
I don't know. I was just wondering if I because I was going to say that again, and I don't want to be repetitive.
Well, it's new to me. How's that sound?
Oh, that's cool.
Craig didn't listen. Nobody listens to what we record anyway, so it's just...
Oh, okay. So I can say anything right now.
Yeah, we could just talk about the first Zelda thing all together. Nobody would notice. Something else I wanted to bring up as well was the inside of the moon. What the hell's up with that?
It was amazing. I loved it.
That really threw, I think, everyone for a loop.
Because I didn't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting that.
Well, first off, I wasn't expecting to go inside the moon. I wasn't expecting it to eat me. And then, like, I expected to just be like the giants would come and, like, push it back up there. And, like, then everything would be okay. Or it would just, like, float back up or something. But no, you go inside the moon, talk to some weird kids with... They don't explain it all, which may be personifications of the demons or personifications of parts of the Skull Kid or parts of Majora, or they may mean nothing.
But they look like the Happy Mask salesman.
Well, that's something I didn't notice.
They're wearing masks, but they have like...
The Happy Mask salesman, and this could all be his fault, and he's just lazy and wants you to do it. And then you challenge them and give them masks and teach them about friendship and all that, because they're all confused about everything. And then the moon explodes in a rainbow. And, like... It does. That's amazing, but it's also really confusing.
It is very strange.
Yeah. I'm wondering if like that's supposed to mean something, or just the whole goes surreal, but it's not surreal to the point where it's just like weird in a Japanese way, if you know what I mean. Like just weird for the sake of weird. It seems weird, but
meaningful in some way, even if you can't determine what that meaning is.
You feel like it's there,
right? You feel like there is at least some purpose, whatever the purpose might be. It does feel intentionally designed that way.
Right, and that's I guess what they were going for, because they said they never wanted it to be dark. They wanted it to be mysterious, and I mean they really nailed that. And do you guys find it odd? Do you find that the public perception of Majora's Mask is really changing? Because, I mean, whenever it was released, it got good reviews, like, from critics. Like, I don't think I've seen one lower than 85 or 90. But it still only sold half as many, less than half, than Ocarina of Time, and most people just, that other Zelda, go put it on the shelf beside Zelda 2, you know? But then now, I'm finding more and more people, and maybe it's just because I'm on the internet now, and I'm talking to, a more diverse range of people, or maybe just the Majora's Mask lovers are more vocal, but I'm finding that the public perception of it's really changing.
It really has. I mean, I was on the internet back then, and, I mean, people liked it, but there was a lot more opposition, or at the very least, way more skepticism of Majora's Mask. Than there was Ocarina. I mean, of course, there was also this huge wait and this huge build-up to Ocarina, and Majora's Mask was like, you just kind of turn around like, there's another one. Yeah. So there was a little less hype, I guess. And you add to the fact that it's like, it's not really about Hyrule, the Triforce, it's not about the usual things. and you also factor in the time limit. That turned a lot of people off, but you're totally right. That's come around, and I think that's sort of what we were talking about earlier in this show, that it needed time to stew. I think people really needed to take some time to really understand Majora's Mask.
And even with us, people who love it, and it's our favorite game, and it had to stew with us, so...
Right.
It just seems weird, though, because it's kind of like what you were mentioning, Craig, on the podcast, where... at some point, you were confused by people's desire to have Luigi's Mansion 2. Because whenever Luigi's Mansion 1 came out, people were like, what is this crap? Like,
right.
This is not Mario on the Dolphin that I wanted. Like, this is Luigi, a game that I can beat in, 3 hours. Like, what is this?
I think it's about expectations.
Luigi's Mansion 2 gets announced, people are like,
yeah!
I've been waiting forever!
Because at the time, I think people had particular expectations of Luigi's Mansion. They wanted a Mario game. They felt like Luigi's Mansion was like this really lame stand-in for a Mario game. When, I mean, we know that now that it's not the case, but that's how people felt. And Majora's Mask was a continuation of Ocarina of Time, but it had really like no real elements of Ocarina of Time. And so people's expectations were very different. And then now that they can like sort of step away from those expectations because time has passed, they can look back and go, oh yeah, those things were actually awesome. I was just looking for something different at the time.
Right. And maybe it's only now that, we've been playing games for a bit more that we can actually do that at the beginning, when we first play a game, maybe? Or a bit earlier?
Yes, I think that's a good point. I think now that, people like us who play a lot of games, play a lot of different kinds of games, become a little more adaptable to things like that. Yeah.
And also one thing I wanted to bring up as well was, we kind of touched on it, but and this is something that a lot of people who love Majora's Mask talk about, is the Anju side quest.
Oh, yes.
I'll leave one of you two to start with that. Why don't you start, Craig? Give us a little bit of just your input on it in general.
Okay. Well, I guess for the people listening who aren't familiar with the quest, it involves two characters in the game, Anju-Kafei, who are sort of like these star-crossed lovers. And the whole point of this side quest, which is barely even a side quest, it's like this whole quest unto itself, really, it spans the entire 3 days. And it requires precise timing and precise understanding of the schedules and the things that are going to happen in the game. Or it involves a guide or a game FAQ. So it's take your pick.
And it goes down to, literally the last few minutes of those 3 days as well.
Absolutely.
There's such a sense of urgency, because even when the earth is shaking and there's that timer of your last X amount of minutes, you still have a lot to do.
Right.
You still have to get the mask back from the thief and then run all the way back. And I don't even think they allow you... Do they allow you to warp?
You could warp. I don't know if the quest allows you to warp. I don't remember. I mean, you can warp in the game, but I don't know if the quest allows you to.
They allow you to, as long as you're not messing up the time.
Right.
You can warp.
But, I mean, the quest is really like a nail-biter, and it's huge. And it does come down right down to the wire when the world is destroyed. And you, at that moment, you unite Anju and Kafei. These people that if you were not paying attention to them while you're playing the game earlier, you definitely become attached to them during this quest. And you reunite them, and then the world ends. And then you, see ya, I'm out of here, and, they die. You reunite them at the last, and it is the most heart-wrenching thing I've ever experienced in a video game to this day. It was probably the first emotionally impactful thing I've ever seen in a video game. And I think it's because so much of it wasn't through a cutscene. And I don't get attached to characters through cutscenes. I think that's that's how movies do it. And movies can do it way better than video games. Video game cutscenes can never touch the quality of a movie. I don't know why they try. It's because I actually participated in reuniting them. There was this huge, massive quest to reunite these people. And if you were not attached to them by the end of that quest, I feel like you have no heart. Man, it was just that really hits you hard.
It does, especially because I mean, I guess maybe you could save the world after directly doing that. I guess, is there time?
I don't think so. I think that's the whole point.
Yeah, so, I mean, you've spent 3 days, which is, I guess, an hour and a half, in-game, running around, delivering letters, and it all starts off as a simple, oh, can you find my son? That's all how it, starts off as something really simple. But then it becomes, so complicated and so, I guess, adult, in a way.
Yeah.
And so deep, and as I've grown older, I've appreciated it more, because, I mean, when I first played it, I wasn't, I wasn't a sappy guy, I guess. But now, after being with my fiancé for so long, I sympathize with them, and it seems like it was, like you said, I don't know, it's hard to describe. It was just so impactful that you're doing all this, and then you reunite them, and you're like, well, now they're happy, but now they're going to die.
Yeah.
And they seem totally okay with that.
I think being an adult does help that. Like, I mean, that hit me like a ton of bricks when I was younger. But I mean, now that I'm an adult and I've had some serious relationships and I have a life partner, like that completely changes the perspective. I shouldn't say completely, but it does add to the perspective of that quest.
Mm-hmm. And how did you feel about that, Ryan?
I remember that the couple's mask, I was really trying to get all the masks, and I really wanted...
I wanted to collect more stuff. I wanted to get everything. Because you need all the masks to get the Fierce Deity mask, so...
Yeah.
To get that
I wanted to know what that last mask was, and I was trying so hard to get that, to get the mask, and I don't know if you guys probably didn't do this because you're probably not as stupid as me, but I actually messed up that time when you're in the little conveyor belt that the mask is on.
No, I messed it up once.
Really? I messed that up.
I'm perfect in every way, so I did not.
I might have messed up the quest, I think twice, but every time I wasn't angry. I was like, I need to do this. I need to help these polygonal characters and their love, which isn't real.
Yeah. I mean, like, my feelings were no different than your guys'. Like, I felt the same emotional connection. I thought the mask itself was really interesting, the design.
Yeah.
Because I actually did not know what it looked like at all, and I thought it was pretty interesting the way it was designed.
Yeah, because it's not really a mask, it's just sort of a picture.
Yeah.
It's just sort of a very simple picture of a man and a woman.
And you realize, like, it's not so much about, like, a mask.
Like,
it's
like a picture of a man and a woman? Oh, man, I have to look this up. I didn't realize that.
Wait, what?
I always just thought it was like a scribble.
Yeah.
It looked more like a scribble to me.
It's not just a scribble?
I didn't know what it was.
Wow.
But I knew it was symbolic and deep, somehow.
Now you guys are making me doubt that I know what the heck I'm talking about here. And
I'm looking at it now. I don't see anything.
Yeah, I am pretty sure, you have,
Oh, I see it. Like, the heads are, like, touching and their arms are, like, sticking out, kind of.
Yeah.
Oh. Wow. Okay, that makes it more meaningful. See?
Great.
Something new every time.
I try.
We're generating our own knowledge here.
Mm-hmm.
I try.
And the thing, too, about it is that it's not that they don't want to be together, but they need your help to do it. Because if Kafei was an adult, he would just be like, dude, go to her. And then he would, and that would be it. But he's got, like, this
Curse.
like, this moral sense, like, I need to see her as who I am. Like, she won't love me and all this, and it's I don't know. It's just so it's hard to explain.
Yeah,
and
I put myself in that situation.
Yeah, like you put yourself in that situation too, and it seems really silly whenever you say it. Just like it seems even cliche. Like, oh, he wants to go to her, but he can't because he's too proud, and turns out she loves him anyways. And but whenever you're experiencing it, it's totally different. It's totally different.
Right.
I just thought it was really weird. Just like, I mean, like, it sounds. You're right. It sounds kind of dumb. Like, I can't go see her. I'm this little kid. But I mean, like, then you think about it. Like, well, I mean, if you were turned into like, if you're,
see ya.
would they even like care about me anymore? I mean, how would everyone else think about this?
If I was a kid, I would go to my fiance and be like, "You gotta help me. I'm a kid."
I know.
We have a problem here. We have a little situation in our hands.
Oh boy, it's like
okay. Wrapping this up quickly. What did you guys think of Keaton as a character? Because I thought Keaton was actually pretty cool. Because like it referenced it in Ocarina of Time as a character. What did you guys think of like Keaton as like an actual character in this game?
I don't know. I think it was just sort of a playful reference. I mean, I was cool with it. I don't really have any strong opinion one way or another.
Didn't think anything of it, really?
No.
No. Did you?
Like, yeah, actually I did. Cause I was like, wow, it's Keaton. I mean, it looks like Pikachu and Ninetales put together, and it knows everything. I was like, wow. And like, because like I never knew how to summon Keaton, and when I did, like, I don't know.
It was just sort of a surprise. So you did it by accident then? That was not a thing. What did you say?
Actually, no. I looked it up on a guide because I'm a cheater.
Oh, okay.
But again, that's another of the weird characters. You put on a mask, and this weird thing appears, this like mystical being, and it's like, answer my questions. It doesn't. I don't know, and I'm kind of wondering, where is Keaton when the moon's falling?
Yeah.
Is he even there? Or just really quickly, I know you have to wrap this up. I'm gonna ask a couple questions. Did you guys ever win the lottery in the game? You know, there's a lottery that you can play?
I don't remember.
A lottery? I don't even remember that.
There's a lottery, like, if you're going up the stairs towards the bank and you keep going, right before you leave, I guess across from the postman's area, there's a lottery you can play. And I was just curious if either of you had ever won.
If I did, it was probably on my first playthrough.
Okay.
Because that's not something I would have bothered with in subsequent playthroughs.
And, do you both have a favorite mask? I know... And I'm going to split it up into the three main masks. So I know, Ryan, you love the Zora mask, and then also one of the separate masks. Because I'm just out of curiosity, just to get out of this, we're going to wrap it up with lighthearted trivia instead of deep.
Yeah, sounds good.
So, Ryan?
Well, it depends on if you're thinking like a technical gameplay aspect or like a symbolic.
Yeah, I think that makes a difference too.
Because, like, gameplay aspect, I know everyone's going to be like, that's just, like, cliche. Gotta say the bunny hood. I love running fast, and I love jumping far. I mean, a lot of people, like, I guess you can call them Majora's Mask pros, quote-unquote, like, would probably use more creative methods with their masks, like the bomb mask and stuff, to do different things. But I'm one of those people who, like, always loves to use the bunny mask. And, but as, like, a symbolic type of mask, couple's mask, definitely, because I just love the whole quest and stuff behind it.
Yeah.
Which I think is also cliche.
And of the three, I guess the spirit masks or whatever, the transforming masks, you like the Zora mask.
Yeah, it's definitely Zora mask. Definitely Zora mask.
And you, Craig?
I'm gonna have to go with the Zora's masks with the three transforming masks. The Deku mask has, some neat symbolism behind it, but for pure function, man, swimming as a Zora is absolute fun.
Love it.
Speaking of the bomb mask, I figured this out when I was playing the game the first time, and it turns out, I talked to people, and a lot of people didn't know this, but if you hold up your shield when you detonate, it doesn't hurt you. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, if you that's a total replacement for bombs, because if you hold up your shield while you explode that mask, you don't get hurt. Right?
Good to know.
Awesome.
Because I would only ever use it if, like, I'm out of bombs, but I know there's something here.
Yeah.
I'll just lose a couple hearts, whatever. But that does make sense.
And it doesn't make any sense, because it's like, how would that protect you? The bomb is on your face. Like, right? It would blow back. I always like the stone mask, because, like, sometimes, like, I'm, like, a wuss, and I don't want to deal with anything. I'll just wear this stone mask. But I'm going to have to go with the Garo mask.
Yeah. That's the one that makes you look like a Jawa, right?
Yeah, and that's because I like the whole. And you said you want to end on a lighthearted note, but we didn't talk about Ikana Valley, but that whole segment of the game, like that was like Majora's Mask established its own mythos in one game, but then you have like these sub mythos of like Ikana Valley, and I think that's absolutely mind blowing. I mean, that's some things like Skyward Sword kind of touched on, where you have these own areas of the game that tell their own little stories, and Ikana Valley, I think, did it way better in my opinion. But everything that goes with that, including the Garo, which these completely mysterious characters that to die without leaving a body, that's the way of the Garo. Like it goes in with the whole sort of darkness with the rest of the game, the whole mysterious aspect, the whole darkness aspect.
They never explain what that whole, the whole temple or the whole old race or anything it was.
No. It's just these little bits and pieces that you get to piece together in almost like an archaeological fashion, and it's never, I don't think, ever bluntly explained, but yeah, there are bits and pieces you can put together.
Not to mention Great Fairy Sword in that region. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Button, oddly enough.
Yes, I don't know why they couldn't map it to
I don't know
an
why.
actual weapon.
Make it annoying. Well, you can still use it while you're Jinx, I guess. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that might be an intentional benefit of it.
Or maybe it's...
Use it as your who?
When you're Jinx, when you're hit by a bubble?
Two-handed swords.
Oh, right. Okay.
But, also, some people might not like using the two-handed wielding sword, and, it forces you to keep only one sword, so maybe that's why, I don't know.
I guess. So your favorites are then the Garo and the Zora, you said, right?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
So I'm going to go with Deku Mask, first off, because I absolutely love Deku Link. And maybe it's just because how he looks, but I always felt, or the fact that you aren't explained that you are, still taking somebody's soul or whatever. But I always thought that Deku Link was more of a Link than the other ones. And I love his abilities to skip on water was great, and to use the flying I thought was fantastic, and his attacking is so weird. And the fact that also in Ocarina of Time there isn't that much interaction with Dekus. There are with the ones that shoot and sell you things, but that's not the kind of Deku you are. Whereas the Gorons and the Zoras, you get more of an interaction with them in Ocarina of Time.
That's true, yeah.
And my favorite mask is, other than the Fierce Deity's mask, obviously, which I guess is a transformation mask, is it's actually probably the Stone Mask. I don't know what it was, but the whole story behind it, with the knight who is basically trapped, nobody can see him, and he's just standing there doing his duty, being depressed, and he's like, nobody can see me. And I don't know, it was fun to, it doesn't work all the time, but to just walk by Keese and minor enemies was fun. And did the two of you ever do the Fierce Deity glitch? I'm assuming you both have many times.
I've never actually tried it, where you're referring to...
Yes, I am.
Yes, yeah. And no, I haven't done it.
I've never tried it, actually.
You both haven't done it?
No. I got my fill of doing stuff like that with Ocarina of Time, with Swordless Link and going under the eyes.
I never did any of that. You can't do it on the GameCube version if you ever wanted to try, because they fixed it. But I don't know. It was a lot of fun. And one last thing,
console.
You can?
I'm assuming you can, because I was pretty sure it's a direct port from the N64.
Well, so was the GameCube one, technically.
I don't know. Go ahead with what you're saying.
One thing I forgot to mention about the masks was, one thing I loved doing, because this was something I loved doing in Ocarina of Time, and you could totally expand on, was putting on a mask and then talking to people. And
you get different reactions, yep.
Yeah. Did you guys love that? I would do that all the time.
Me too.
Yeah, I love doing that.
I like that.
Because I loved going around, in Ocarina of Time, as a Gerudo, and, hearing what the people had to say about a Gerudo or wearing a Goron mask. But now you have, I don't know how many masks there are, 20 or something? 30?
5, I think.
Yeah, somewhere in that frame, yeah.
Different reactions from people, and some of them do cross over, but some of them you can't even wear the Giant's mask. But you get some really, I don't know. I just love talking to people and getting people's reactions, and
talking to enemies too.
Yeah, or talking to enemies, and I feel like it gives you even more of a look into the character, I guess.
Totally.
Yep.
I don't know.
It just spans the world.
Yeah.
One thing I really liked that has nothing to do... We've been talking about all gameplay things and no real technical things, but I love the animation in this game, where it's it's a huge step up from Ocarina of Time, and particularly for the time, it was really, really impressive. Like, I mean, even just in the beginning, where Link falls off Epona, and Skull Kid kicks him over, that whole turning animation when Link flops over is, first of all, that's not a canned animation because it's not used at any other point in the game. It's used specifically for that scene in real time, and that really impressed me. And then you gain control of Link, and he's doing these flips as you're going up like the stairs when you're pursuing Skull Kid, and I'm like, whoa, this is awesome. And I mean, there's just all sorts of things like that in the game. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, and Zora Link is crazy fluid.
Yeah.
So Ryan, I know you have to go.
Yes, I do have to leave you, gentlemen. It's been nice talking with you about video games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been great.
All right, so we'll just wrap it all up. Any final thoughts on Majora's Mask you guys want to say?
I don't know. We got done talking about it for about an hour and a half. Just rewatch the video if you want my final thoughts.
All right. I personally have nothing else to say. It's an amazing game, and if you don't like it, give it another shot with what we had in mind. And if you still don't like it, I perfectly understand. It's very weird. Anything you want to say, Craig?
I would say that in both my personal and professional capacity, looking at games, it is probably the only game I consider perfect. Like, perfect. Where 10 out of 10 doesn't mean it's an excellent, can't-miss game, where 10 out of 10 means it is a perfect game. It does everything absolutely right, does nothing wrong, and there's been some rumbling about a 3DS version, both from Nintendo and from fans, and I really, really hope that comes to pass. I hope that's a thing, and I hope they do that.
And I hope that if they do that, they don't make it all bright and cheery like they did Ocarina of Time.
I don't think they would change it much. I just want to be able to play it because, like, as much as I love it, it does look a bit rough around the edges because the Nintendo 64 is not a particularly powerful piece of hardware. So it'd be nice to be able to play it where it looks a bit nicer for modern eyes.
All right, so here's to that happening. I really hope it does, so we can experience it again, and so many more people can experience it. And thanks a lot for taking time out of both of your busy schedules to have this conversation with me.
All right, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me as well.
All right, so this has been Silver Mongoose Videos, and remember, classic gaming never gets old.